Good evening, Facebook friends and family, citizens of America and the planet. Good to see you again. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's Fireside Chat. And go ahead and like this and share it, and let's spread the word. The resistance is strong and it's growing. There's so much going on. There's an attack happening really from all sides. We're seeing that in so many ways from this new administration, this new regime of Donald Trump. But people are fighting back in really exciting and inspiring ways. Weigh in and share your thoughts. How are you fighting back? How are you seeing this new assault, this neo-fascist attack on our democracy, our values, our climate, our health, our immigrants, and our human rights and indigenous people? There's been so much of an attack, but also so much of a really wonderful response, rallying around our immigrant brothers and sisters, our Latino friends and neighbors, and our Muslim friends and associates and classmates and workmates and all that. We saw the Trump administration come out with their Muslim ban. They say it's not a ban, but that's how they talked about it. They didn't write it down as that, but that's how they talked about it, this Muslim ban. Which, yes, it's not all Muslims, but it's from the poor Muslim nations, the nations that we have been bombing and attacking, the nations that are, incredibly, under assault, violence-ridden, and which are poor. The nations that were spared from this were the ones that Donald Trump wants to do business with, where he has his golf course in the United Arab Emirates, and where he wants to start a hotel in Saudi Arabia. So they were exempt from this ban, even though that's, the Saudi Arabia is where actual terrorists that attacked the U.S. in 9/11 originated from. So, not hard to justify this ban based on national security, and in fact, it plays right into our adversaries' hands. So, it's wonderful how people are standing up, how the acting Attorney General said that she would not defend this ruling. Something like 1,000 members of the State Department have signed on to this incredible protest letter condemning this ban. And as we know, the problem is not just the ban, it's also the wall that they want to build, which Mexico has basically said no how, no way. And the Mexican president canceled his scheduled visit. We know that Donald Trump has also called for an attack on sanctuary cities, which we should all be sanctuary cities. We should be a sanctuary nation that stands up for the human rights of everyone, including the immigrants, especially the immigrants who've come here essentially as refugees from our misguided, harmful, predatory policies, like the wars. The regime change wars in the Middle East, similarly the undermining of democracies like Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, countries that have been incredibly violence-racked since the U.S. supported coups in those countries, most recently in Honduras, where Hillary Clinton had supported the overthrow of the democratically elected government in Honduras and had given the thumbs up to that coup, basically a corporate coup with U.S. support. So people are coming here fleeing our policies, like NAFTA in addition. Barring the refugees whom we have created as refugees is the absolute wrong thing to do. We need to welcome refugees, and we also need to stop undermining democracies abroad, stop undermining economies, stop the war on drugs, which has caused violence in so many countries, particularly south of the border. Over 100,000 people killed in Mexico alone over the past decade. So these are problems that we can fix. And it is so beautiful and inspiring to see all the people who are coming out to stand up. And I want to give a personal thank you to everyone who's involved, everyone who's going out and demonstrating, in picketing, in sitting in, all the ways that we are standing up for the values that we represent as one people on one planet, and the values on which this country was founded, the values of freedom, democracy, and human rights. So big thank you to everyone. Please share with us what you're doing. Share what you're up to. How are you struggling in your community? We saw also the very heartwarming strike of the taxi drivers that were supporting the shutdown in New York City, in the airport there, in support of the effort to stop the immigrant ban. We saw the action of the federal judge in New York, basically challenging that ban, particularly on immigrants with valid visas. And we saw action in courts in several other cities as well. I know the state of Massachusetts now, along with Virginia, and I think Washington State and maybe one other, are also going to court now to try to stand up for human rights and to stop this onslaught against human rights, against basic American values, against our security, actually, because it totally plays into the hands of our adversaries for us to be locking out Muslims based, essentially on religion, prejudice, and xenophobia. So thanks to everyone. Share with us what you're doing. I want to also mention the successes that this movement is having in pushing back. So in addition to the actions in federal court and the Attorney General, the acting Attorney General, Yates, who resigned in protest, people donated $24 million over the weekend to the ACLU. We were able to stop the purging of climate information from the White House website. So kudos to everyone who's been standing up on that. The gag order was lifted from the USDA. And the fight goes on. Several people were arrested at some of the pipeline sites because that's been another line of attack from the Trump administration, who basically revived the KXL pipeline and also the Dakota Access Pipeline. So these fights are very engaged right now. We'll talk about that again in a moment, but I did want to acknowledge the other protesters who actually locked down at some of the other pipelines around the country, including the Diamond Pipeline in Memphis. Big shout out for you guys. The pipeline, the Sable Trail pipeline in Florida, and the Trans-Pecos pipeline in Texas. Thanks to you all for resisting. These pipelines threaten us all. And then a big thank you to the people at Standing Rock. I don't know if you've heard, but word has gone out that the National Guard is being mobilized and that tanks are being brought to Standing Rock. So if you are able-bodied and you can go, please consider going to stand with our brothers and sisters at Standing Rock to defend them. They have looked the dragon in the face before, and they have prevailed, and the more of us that are there, the stronger we'll be. because, as you know, what they are standing up for is the climate we all share, the water supply in the Missouri River that feeds millions of people. Some people estimate as many as 17 million people rely on that drinking water, and much of our agriculture supply as well. So they're standing up for our essential water. They're also standing up for human rights, for their sacred sites, for their indigenous rights, and they're standing up for the climate, which is under threat. And this is a huge pipeline. It's really important that we not allow this to be built. All of us are very much at stake right now, and you can see Willie is reaching out to be a part of this struggle on behalf of people in the planet. This is a time for all of us to stand together. And you can go to sacredstone.com to find out more about what's happening at Standing Rock, and also the lastrealindians.com to stay abreast of those developments. And again, if you're able, please go and support our brothers and sisters who have put their bodies on the line for so long now. We need to stand with them and to stand strong. And the last thing I wanted to mention was, and then we'll turn to your questions. Again, please like and share so we can build this resistance, which is getting stronger by the day. You know, the numbers of people that are coming out is just breaking all records, actually. You know, I think this is probably the biggest mobilization that I have witnessed in my 67 years, bigger than, you know, what we did to stop the war in Iraq, and bigger than, you know, the mobilization in the 60s around the Vietnam War. So, you know, this is the new way of life. This is the community out in the streets, and we are moving forward. So thank you for making that happen. The Democrats, as you know, are not exactly leading the charge. You know, the trail is being blazed by people who are going out in the streets and protesting. And then the Democrats are kind of following in line. But unfortunately, up until things really exploded around the Muslim ban, the Democratic leadership was voting for every one of Donald Trump's nominees, this cartel of billionaires, bankers, and war hawks who are being nominated to the richest cabinet in history. So, you know, it's really important for us to stand up. At the same time, the nominees for the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, the nominees for the new leadership, refused to say no to lobbyist money, to corporate money, and to their superdelegates, which is how the big money stays in charge of the Democratic Party. So for all you trolls that are out there listening, you know, remember, it's the Democratic Party, and it's that stranglehold of big money that we need to fight together. And for those who thought Donald Trump was going to be the solution, you know, I'm sorry to say, but it's going to become crystal clear that this cabinet of bankers and billionaires is not working for you, not working for working people. This Supreme Court justice that was just nominated, in fact, has a track record for saying no to working people, for saying no to our health coverage, in particular for reproductive health care coverage, and for saying no to workman's comp to cover workers who are injured on the job. Working people should not be in the target hairs of the Republican Party nor the Democratic Party, which both have abandoned working people. So that's the way forward. We need a radical progressive agenda. It's going to become painfully clear to so many people who supported Donald Trump, thinking that he was going to be standing up for working people. I'm sorry to say, but it was a trap. And we're going to be seeing them working to cut Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, health care, and so on. So this is a time for us to stand up and consider running for office. And I want to mention two people who are running right now in special elections. So it's off season, they're the only ones out there. So this is an incredible opportunity for us to come together across the nation to support these two candidates. One of them is running for Congress. His name is Kenneth Mejia, and he was interviewed on this Green News Network last night. You can see that interview. He is running for Congress in LA. I believe it's the 36th district, and it's mejiaforcongress.com, and that's MEJIA, the number 4, congress.com. And Sherry Hunkala is running for state representative in one of the very poor, abandoned, disenfranchised districts in Philadelphia. And Sherry is one of the leading spokespeople for those who are being thrown under the bus. And you can find her, we'll post her website. I don't yet know offhand what that is. But two great candidates that we can mobilize behind. So running for office is part of the solution here. We need to be a social movement out in the streets, but we also need to challenge power. Because as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. We need to be that demand. So let me just look at some of the questions coming in and comments. And please send yours. What are you doing to build the resistance? How are you fighting back? How are you feeling the heat in your community? So Mel is chiming in, and a shout out to Mel, okay? Mel is helping with this live stream broadcast as she always does. Mel is one of the behind the scenes people. So big kudos to Mel. And she is saying that at UC Berkeley, she is a graduate student, students and defenders of social justice are standing up to Milo Yiannopoulos and the alt-right tonight at UC Berkeley. If you're in the area, please come out to support the MLK Multicultural Center at Spruill Plaza to join the resistance. Go Mel. Jessica Brancato Montanaro. Brancato Montanaro. She says, what is the Green Party doing? So we are running for office and we're building local chapters. So just find the state party. You can Google the Green Party for your state and find out what's going on near you. You can also go to Jill2016.com and sign up on our email list, and we'll also keep you posted. Duncan McGuire says, stepping up donations to protect our winters for climate change, as well as Surfrisers Foundation. Also helping volunteer with beach cleanups, stocks in some renewable energy, and spreading the word of the revolutionary end of the two-party system. Awesome. So Duncan is sharing what he's doing to build the resistance. Carlos Martinez says, join us in Houston, Texas, as we occupy the Super Bowl to punt the pipelines for people and the planet. Awesome. Occupy the Super Bowl. That's hashtag Occupy the Super Bowl. And more information at houstonstands.org. Yes, and Texas has pipelines. Like there's pipelines really all over the country, all over the world, and the pipelines are bringing us together in this struggle. So great work, Carlos. Eric Longenecker, he says, okay, here's an update on Standing Rock. Standing Rock raided again. 76 arrested, including Chase Iron Eyes. Okay. This is what we feared. And again, if you are able to go and support people at Standing Rock, please do that. And let's all go to Chase Iron Eyes' website, which is lastrealindians.com. And let's stay updated on that and prepare to weigh in. There is also a public process that's going on right now. Supposedly, there's an environmental impact study going on regarding DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline, and they're taking public comment. So if I can ask Mel to post again the URL for us to all write in and let's just flood them with millions of public comment about how our survival, our air, our water, our climate, our food depends on stopping the climate crisis. We cannot build the Dakota Access Pipeline. Please weigh in. Christy Hargrave says, calling Republican senators and telling them to vote against cabinet nominees. Thank you, Christy. That's a very important way that we can all help build this movement. Do that. There are some swing Republican senators, and so it's not futile to make those calls. And actually, there are some Democrats who are voting for the Republican nominees. So let's flood them with our demands that they do the right thing. Emma Fiala, and here's what Emma's doing. Marched with 15,000 of my neighbors in Minneapolis. Where did this go? In Minneapolis last night in support of our Muslim neighbors, friends, and family. Thank you, Emma. Beautiful work. Diane Boyd went to DFW Sunday to support detainees. Great turnout, lots of support. Awesome, Diane. Sarah Ornelas says, what can we do for Standing Rock? Go to that website and go to Standing Rock if you can. And let's, again, weigh in with your comments on the public input regarding the pipeline permit. Next comment. Kat Bagley says, more camps need help than just Sacred Stone. We have to clean up Oseti Sakowin camp before the water rises and gets contaminated. That's another one of the camps around in the vicinity of the pipeline. We need able bodies to clean up. The raid today was to dismantle the Last Chance camp on top of the hill, which had the best outlook over the DAPL project and the drill pad. Thank you for that explanation, Kat. So that's what's going on. They raided apparently one of the camps at the top of the hill that could help mobilize people when they were going to start the work. So there are several other camps that are still up and running. And again, if people are able-bodied and they can help, please consider going. Celestial Brennan Beam says, so proud of my Washington State and Seattle for its stance on being a sanctuary city. There are actually something like 50 sanctuary cities, and there are hundreds of sanctuary districts, counties around the country. And in fact, I think it is San Francisco, if I recall correctly, that has filed a lawsuit saying that it is illegal to threaten to withdraw funding from the sanctuary cities. So, it's another part of this resistance. And the more that we are out in the street and shouting loud and clear, the more strength we're going to have behind these court cases. So Jared Francis Zilli says, why do you think protesting works? We are a democracy, and we are a nation of laws. Those laws are encoded. What the Trump administration is doing right now is violating constitutional rights, violating laws, violating conflict of interest laws. And for us to stand up, we have to lead the way. It's the people leading the way, both for our judges and our attorneys. When they see that we are standing up for the right thing, it gives them the courage to stand up for the right thing. Same thing for our lawmakers. And, I can't stress strongly enough that we also have to run for office and actually challenge power. Protesting in the street is really critical. This is what social movements look like. This is how the labor movement achieved, living wages, even minimum wages, child labor laws, Social Security, you name it. It was by standing up through a strong social movement. The same thing for women's right to vote. The same thing for the civil rights movement. Over and over again, it's a mobilized mass movement that makes the engines turn, but then it's challenging power and actually being elected to actual office that allows us to then change the rules of the game. You need a social movement and you need a political movement to actually get traction. So we've got to do both. Good question, James. Thank you. Jesse Wallets says, I live in San Francisco where many of us are on board. So I've been trying to have a dialogue with my Ohio family, some of who are on board, some not. My mom called her representatives in Ohio today to ask them not to vote for Betsy DeVos. She told them they would be hearing from her daily. That's awesome. Betsy DeVos, as you may know, is a billionaire and an advocate for school privatization and for religious education. We live in a secular democracy where we don't mix religion and state, and we need to have public education. Education should not be a choice. High quality education should be a right for everyone. Betsy DeVos is an advocate for charter schools. And, you know, the motto for charters is, well, they need a choice. Well, quality education should not be a choice for some. It should be a right for everyone. We need well-funded, high-quality public schools, not high-stakes testing, but schools that teach to the whole student for lifetime learning. So, yes, call your senators and your congressmen and tell them not to support these billionaires and bankers and warmongers that are being nominated to our nation's cabinet. James Kirk, how can we strengthen the Green Party? Seems like there's a lot of opportunity for growth now. Absolutely, James, and one of the most important things you could do would be to help one of these two special election candidates that are running in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Their elections are coming up on very short notice because they're running to fill seats that have been vacated. So one of them, again, is Sherry Honkala, running for state representative in Philadelphia. And if you go to her website, and we'll be posting that here, you can volunteer to help phone bank, which makes all the difference. If you live in Philadelphia, you can, or in Pennsylvania, you can actually go there and help to canvass. This is about neighbor to neighbor, person to person, resident to resident. If you call, you can join the phone banking and help get the word out. This is a winnable election. Sherry is running in the poorest, one of the poorest districts in the whole country that has been totally abandoned by the Democrats. And, you know, Philly is a Democratic town to start with. So this is potentially a breakthrough campaign. Please get involved. Make a small contribution. If everybody listening, there are like 1,000 people that are tuned into this conversation right now. And if everybody listening threw into the hat $5 or $27, like the average contribution for Bernie, it would make all the difference in the world. And by the way, we are now up to 1,100 viewers. So like this, share this, get the word out. Let's build the movement. Let's build the resistance. And the other candidate is Kenneth Mejia, and that's MejiaForCongress.com, and that's MEJIA, MejiaForCongress.com. Diane Boyd says, standing with Standing Rock in Dallas on Friday at the Army Corps of Engineers. All right, thank you, Diane, for that word. I guess that means there is a rally going on at the Army Corps of Engineers in Dallas on Friday. Check it out, Diane. Give us information that we can post and lift up on our site so that people know about that. Adam Hammond says he's running for Alaska District 18 in 2018. Awesome. Let us know, Adam, what office you are running for. That's great. The more running, the better. Christy Hargrave is protesting at LAX. Peaceful protest. use of white privilege as a shield to protect my brothers and sisters of color. That's wonderful, and that's very important because we, with skin my color and hair my color, we tend not to be physically abused by the police, whereas our brothers and sisters of color, not so. They are picked out and abused. So the more we can use our privilege to help shelter and protect our African American, Latino, indigenous brothers and sisters, the better. Going to the airports to join the protests is wonderful. Shout out, by the way, to the taxi drivers, again, in New York City who helped support the protest against the Muslim ban. Rachel Ugarte says, how can we get ranked choice voting in Florida? Thank you for mentioning that, Rachel. Ranked choice voting is one of those critical reforms that we must have. In this election, most people were voting against the candidate they were most afraid of. So the majority of voters for Donald Trump were actually voting against Hillary Clinton, not for Donald Trump. So what kind of democracy is it if the main question you go to vote on is who are you most afraid of? You know, that does not a healthy democracy make. We need a voting system that unleashes our values, that allows us to bring our values into our vote. That voting system is called ranked choice voting. It lets you rank your choices. So your number one might be an underdog, but your number two is your safety candidate. That lets you actually express your values, lets our values act as a compass, a moral compass for our democracy. Under ranked choice voting, you can actually express your values because if your first choice loses, your vote's automatically reassigned to your second choice. It was just passed in the state of Maine, and for that person who just asked that question, I would say get in touch with one of your voting justice democracy organizations. Fair Vote, for example, is an organization that helps cities and states fight for ranked choice voting. So if you go to fairvote.org, you can find out how to help build that movement in your state or how to support that effort to push ranked choice voting through in other states. And let's see. So I'm getting the word here that we have just a couple minutes left. And again, thank you to everyone for tuning in. Thank you all so much for your inspired resistance, for building this movement in which we are unstoppable together. Danny Mata says, I will always support the Green Party. Thank you, Danny. Daniel Goheen says, everybody close your big bank accounts and either open up a community bank or a credit union account. Thank you, Daniel. I chime in. I have done as much myself and moved to a credit union for the vast majority of my banking as well, and encourage everyone to move your money. And Angie Griswold says, I'm a conservative here and respectfully listening to Ms. Stein. Everyone's views matter, and we learn so much by listening to each other. Thank you, everyone, for open minds. Thank you, Angie. I couldn't agree more. And one last here. Veronica Gonzalez Olette says, protest, divest, get involved, all important. All of these things are important for social grassroots movements. And I'll just end saying thank you so much. It's an inspiration to talk with you all. Let's keep building the movement, building the force. And again, like this conversation, share it. Let's get the good news out. And remember, green news is good news. I'll see you all again out in the street and next week on this network. Thanks so much. Good night.